Salutations, my friends, and thank you for tuning in to another one of the mini casts that we're starting to do. I have titled this one Transforming into the Technocracy because, indeed, a number of articles have come out that kind of allude to the fact that still we are seeing the technocracy infrastructure being built. We are seeing so many different things take place with Amazon buying Whole Foods Market, Bayer buying Monsanto, you name it. So many different things are happening all over the world that it alludes more to the socioeconomic reformation that we talk about so frequently. Another reason as to why we are actually doing this episode is because I wrote an article about this actually taking place for AWD News, the technocratic infrastructure and how tech CEOs and business leaders meet to talk about technology and innovation. Now, this happened earlier in the week. I wrote that, I think, June 19th. Yeah, June 19th. And we're hearing more things take place. I mean, it's kind of crazy, some of the things that we're going to be talking about. Things like the people in Sweden, how they're microchipping commuters to pay for their train, self-driving doctors, robots with the ability to think and feel, and how they'll be among us within 10 years, drones that are able to see through walls using Wi-Fi, and Jack Ma, the founder and president of Alibaba, talking about how we're only going to work 4 hours a day. There's so many different things going on that I think it is astounding the rate at which we're moving. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. So as I said before, earlier, I had actually written an article about the technocracy and how we're seeing these types of things take place. And whenever I wrote this article, what I was really trying to illustrate is the fact that with everything going on, Jared Kushner trying to create this technology council, this meeting of innovation, so to speak, modernizing the government's information technology systems. I felt like what we're going to be seeing more so is the trimming of the fat, so to speak, the trying to make things more efficient, trying to create a world that basically goes along the lines of sustainable development. They don't want to have all this extra stuff. So a lot of that comes with, and we'll see how this whole story develops. A lot of things are going on with that. They're trying to create a think tank in Washington that can create a better infrastructure for the government to run its systems, to get people on healthcare, welfare, you name it, to allocate services, to allocate funds, to do all kinds of different things. And they've actually recruited the help of people like Apple CEO Tim Cook, Amazon's Jeff Bezos. They've even got people like Jeannie Ramadi of IBM, people like Peter Thiel of Silicon Valley. They have them all. The one strange person that actually didn't show up was Mark Zuckerberg, and that's probably because that would have drawn too much attention at the White House. Now, recently we've actually talked about how Elon Musk said that he's going to withdraw, or he'll do some kind of retaliatory act because of Trump pulling away from the Paris Climate Agreement. Now, what we're seeing here really is how these companies have more power than countries. That's what I was really trying to illustrate in this article without going off the rails. We are now seeing what happens whenever these countries these companies have more power than countries. They are able to influence policy, and we're already aware of our country being sold out. Lobbyists, you name it, special interests, and even foreign affairs or foreign interests as well. You name it. All kinds of different things are going on in that infosphere. And that's what we see taking place, is them literally trying to figure out different ways to create a technocratic society, the technocracy. And I've talked about this time and time again that I believe the technocracy is Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. That is the New World Order. That is what they're most certainly trying to do. Now, another thing I think is very strange that I saw pop up in this time frame that I think falls in the category of this technocracy is how apparently in Japan they're coming out with thought control, or a thought crime bill. I think that is I really don't even know what to say. It says right here, and this got put up June 16th. It's from Your Newswire. It says Japanese citizens protest the thought crime bill that was passed by the government. It says thousands of Japanese citizens have taken to the streets of Japan in protest to a new thought crime bill passed by the government aimed at curbing conspiracies to commit terrorism. Over 5,000 people gathered outside the Japanese parliament in Tokyo on Wednesday to demonstrate the Orwellian law imposed by the government ahead of the 2020 Olympic Games. Al Jazeera reports that Tokyo youngsters shouting "No Parsan" or "No Pasaran" right now at 23:55 in the Diet building or the Diet building to protest the new conspiracy bill. And this is basically the Twitter capture that I'm reading from. It says that the government says the bill is part of the intentional international joint effort against crime ahead of the 2020 Olympic Games. After the parliamentary vote on Thursday, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe told reporters the law seeks to protect Japanese citizens in part and is part of the Convention of Transnational Organized Crime, quote, to prevent terrorism before it happens. But critics say it is abuse of power and unconstitutional attack on freedom of expression. Quote, this legislation is the perfect example of how government is using counterterrorism as an excuse for mass surveillance of ordinary citizens and activists trying to remilitarize the country and crack down on dissidents, Tokyo resident Elisa Torrio said to Al Jazeera. And I would say that is probably the best way to explain all of what we see taking place whenever I say that they are trying to use security as a pretext to take away our freedoms. Whenever they're trying to come up with all these other problems that we see taking place to say, oh, these are the solutions that you need. Lisa Torrios explained it perfectly. This legislation is the perfect example of how government is using counterterrorism as an excuse for mass surveillance of ordinary citizens and activists trying to remilitarize the country and crack down on dissidents. I couldn't agree more, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about them trying to remilitarize not only the city, the country, and everything we see taking place. We're seeing them, again, as I've said before, institute more of this socioeconomic reformation. So what kind of follows along the same lines of thought control? What falls along the same lines? And if anything, let's see if we can get an in-depth view with this, or a different perspective, where we're looking at how Japan boosted surveillance powers to implement the pre-crime monitoring and prosecution. This is another take on it. It was put up the day before because we like to monitor these types of stories, because pre-crime is now becoming more of a reality than we think. Chicago, it's either Chicago or Baltimore that's being sued because people already are having problems with how the information that they're using as far as pre-crime and trying to stop crime before it actually happens. And this is whenever you get into the debate of citizen threat ranking. How much are you doing that is considered offensive? What are you doing that's offensive? What content are you putting out? What are you saying? And this is, again, another thing that we see taking place in the terror spectrum. And this is why whenever we say, oh, these terrorists, they were known terrorists, they were already marked, they were already on the government's radar. Well, this is what we're talking about. It's the pre-crime. Whenever they have these terrorist acts take place, it's things like this, where they have these laws in place, these bills in place, so they can try to implement the concept of stopping crime before it happens. Let's get into this article. It's from Technocracy News, and it's by Andy Sharp. It says, this is the most draconian surveillance program in the world next to China's advanced technocracy. Abe would prosecute criminals before they commit a crime based on surveillance data. Privacy advocates are up in arms, and even the United Nations thinks Abe has gone too far. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe government passed controversial legislation that gives prosecutors the power to monitor and arrest people in the planning of stages of crime. As dawn broke on Thursday, bleary-eyed lawmakers voted to pass the so-called anti-conspiracy bill, which the government says is needed to bolster counterterrorism precautions ahead of the 2020 Olympics. Opposition lawmakers pulled out an array of political tricks to delay the vote until morning. Under the bill, terrorist groups and criminal organizations could be punished for the planning of 277 crimes, which range from arson to copyright violation. Critics say that the The legislation is vague and could lead to the suppression of civil liberties and excessive state surveillance. The legislative win paves the way for Abe to push ahead with his long-held ambition to revise the pacifist constitution that has defined Japan's security policy since World War II. Last month, he proposed the amendment to recognize the existence of Japan's self-defense forces while maintaining Article 9, which renounces the right to war and prohibits land, sea, and air forces. He wants the change to take effect by 2020. Quote, this fits Abe's agenda in the run-up to a prospective national referendum on constitutional revision and Japan's possible involvement in future wars, said Koichi Nakano, professor of political science at Sophia University in Tokyo. Both of these would require new means to control unruly citizens who object to the government decisions. Precisely. And that's what we're seeing. Whenever they have these thought crime bills, whenever they put these things out here, they're basically saying you're not allowed to criticize the government. You're not allowed to have an opinion. You're not allowed to have something that is dissident. You see. And where will they get this kind of information? Where will they have these types of things? They'll check your Facebook. They'll check this social media. All of the things that we have in front of us right now, they are really just there to act as more forms of surveillance. They're meant to try to shock you into a state of fear. It's a 24/7 surveillance device, without a doubt. I mean, they're figuring out how to use drones to see through walls. Whenever we've talked about how invasive the technocracy is becoming and how they will use things like your Facebook posts, your Twitter posts, your videos, your live, all these different things to indicate your threat level. Well, what happens whenever we have some broadcasts on the show that are actually terminated? Whenever the information gets too critical, that's called censorship. That is thought crime. This is beyond George Orwell's 1984. This is where we are in 2017. No longer are these things seen as folly or fake, but we are now living in a fully immersed technocratic society. We're transforming into the technocracy. That's why this episode is titled as such, because the things that we are seeing, they're literally trying to build up the infrastructure so that whenever 10, 20 years down the line at this rate, it seems as if nothing. And a clip I want to play for you guys later, if you know what, let's just play that for you guys now. It is, and I'll try to get it ready for you guys. What it is we have Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, talking about how the next 30 years are going to be difficult. They're going to be difficult. Simply because and this is why I've termed it as such, the socioeconomic reformation. We are changing everything that we know. But with that being said, let's let Mr. Ma speak for himself.
So this is what I think. The way to figure out the job creation, one of the best ways is to helping small business to sell their local products across the board. And we have to prepare now, because next 30 years is going to be painful.
It's going to be painful.
Very painful.
Because of the changes that are going to take place.
Change of the technology, change of the robots.
You're going to have a lot of people with a lot of time on their hands, too.
Well, you know, the other thing people would be interested...
Now, they might want to spend it on Alibaba watching movies and buying things, but...
Well, believe it or not, I think next 30 years, people only work 4 hours a day and maybe 4 days a week. My grandfather worked 16 hours a day in the farmland to dig in. He thinks he's very busy. We work 8 hours, 5 days a week. We think we are very busy. By the next 30 years, people only work 4 hours. Normal people visit like a... So this is what I think. The way to...
And I feel like that is a crazy way to look at it. You know, your father or your grandfather probably worked 16 hours a day, and he thought he was working a lot. You're working 8 hours a day, and you think that's a lot. In the next 30 years, people will work 4 hours a day and think that's a lot. And the reason why he's coming out with this, and I definitely hope, I would suggest you guys go listen to the actual interview, because what we're talking about here is a grander scale of everything taking place. What he's talking about right now is automation. He's talking about the socioeconomic reformation, as I term it, the fourth industrial revolution, the post-industrialization society. This is the fourth turning. This is globalization. This is what happens whenever we have automation take over. The robots are here, and they will continue to come. We need to start asking ourselves, well, what takes place after? This is where we're at. So in 4 years, think about what you're able to take, or 4 hours. Think about what you're able to take care of in 4 hours today, with technology that we have today. What happens whenever you're able to use all the technology and send it off somewhere else and have it create something else entirely, simply because of the things that are at your disposal? I mean, while people are listening to this or watching this, I still have people reading on our Instagram feed, or possibly even watching other videos. Think about the diversity the next 30 years will create. 4 years of 4 hours of physical labor may seem like a lot, but we don't know, because all of these things are part of the technocracy. This is part of us moving more forward into the future, to where we don't think we're affected by these types of things. Another thing that we have to see taking place, and this is, I wanted to actually try to get Charles Caston's opinion on it whenever we were talking about the technocracy, was things like universal basic income. Now, and this is something I've been trying to wrap my mind around and understand for a while, because we actually see it taking place in Hawaii. Here in America, universal basic income is basically the concept to where it's like money just delivered to you. But this money comes at a price. You have to be unemployed. And I'll play a clip for you guys after this, but it says Hawaii has become, and this is from Mint Press News. I put it up June 16th. It's by Jake Johnson. It says Hawaii may soon become the first state to implement universal basic income. It says Hawaii has become the first American state to officially begin exploring the possibility of UBI, universal basic income, after a bill requesting the creation of a, quote, basic economic security working group recently passed both houses of the state legislature. A UBI would, if passed, guarantee every resident a fixed income regardless of their employment status or any other factors that come into play with the welfare programs like food stamps and temporary assistance for needy families. So I was wrong. You don't have to be unemployed. Regardless of your employment status, you can still receive this money. And I feel like that's dangerous. That is very dangerous, because you have people who will, these are techno serfs. This is neo-feudalism. You have people who are indentured to the state. Numerous countries have experimented with basic income, but the idea has never gained so much traction in the United States. The Hawaii bill was put forth by State Representative Chris Lee, who in a Reddit post on Thursday explained the motivations behind the measure and the ambitions driving the movement, demanding economic justice for all. Quote, I introduced House Concurrent Resolution 89 this year to start a conversation about our future, Lee wrote. He continued, HCR 89 does two things. First, it boldly declares that all families in Hawaii deserve basic financial security. As far as I'm told, it's the first time any state has made such a pronouncement, but I think it's an important statement of our values here in Hawaii on which we seek to act. HCR 89 also establishes a basic income security work group co-chaired by the Department of Labor and the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism to analyze our state's economy. Interesting. So while we see this taking place, right? Hawaii entertaining the idea of having universal basic income. Places like Finland are already doing it. Places like Finland are already rolling out unconditional basic income to all citizens. I know this doesn't seem right, or it doesn't seem like it's going to happen, but it will happen. They will run these types of experiments. These types of things will take place. The whole scheme behind it is to have 2,000 of its citizens over the last 5 months, and many have already reported on its benefits, including decreased stress, more incentives to find work, and more time to pursue business ambitions. Now, if we listen to Mark Zuckerberg talk about his vision of universal basic income, he believes it should be the New Deal. He believes it should be the panacea, the new social contract. We need one. We need our own social contract. We need something like the New Deal. Well, this is, again, what if you ask me, I feel like this is a form of socialism. Who is going to provide all of this? Where is this money going to come from? All these things are gonna mess up whatever we see taking place. But is that the point? Is that the point as to why they are rushing so hard to create so many robots so that they can disrupt the economy, so that they can come forward and say, you know what, we can't have this many people not working, but we can give you this much money. Here's what we need to do. We need to think of new jobs. We'll give you X amount of money every month, and you can do this amount of work. I don't know, but again, this is more of what I think is the universal, or the socioeconomic reformation. Back in May is whenever Mark Zuckerberg made that statement, how he believes that people need to, he says, now it's time for our generation to define a new social contract. We should explore ideas like universal basic income to make sure that everyone has a cushion to try new ideas. So we're going to have a societal conversation about how we manage this. I'm sure, because how do we, it's crazy. How do we deal with these types of things? How do we deal with our entire society reshaping itself simply because we're having the robots come through? How are we having the technocracy rise up from the ashes of corrupt cronyism, or crony capitalism, corrupt capitalism? How are we having this come out of things? You see, a crazy concept that we really need to start entertaining is, okay, well, what happens whenever we actually start seeing robots? What happens whenever we start seeing these things unfold? Right now, you're actually seeing robot bartenders and how they're expected to be in the Las Vegas Strip this summer. They were on cruise ships before. We're seeing 3D food printers, or 3D food printers. Yep, replicators, as some people want to call them, in a nod to Star Trek. Food replicators, food robots, automation. We're seeing kiosks, and don't worry, we will get to Amazon. We will get to Amazon buying Whole Foods. But that's what I'm talking about. Could you imagine a world where Amazon has beaten Walmart? At least Walmart can employ people. Yeah, sure, Amazon can employ people as well to maintenance the drones before they go back out. But in this super efficient society that we're moving into, it does not lack it lacks human purpose. We have to create our own purpose in this. Is it merely to maintain these robots because these robots can do all of these jobs that are taking place, that are menial? We need to create a purpose for ourselves. This is why they're coming up with self-driving doctors. We'll trust a machine before we trust ourselves. We will go and listen to a robot drive itself up to us the same way we have the drones deliver things to us. We will have a robot doctor drive right up to us. It'll look at us. It'll diagnose us. It'll give us a prescription. You'll have an online chat with an actual doctor. It's crazy. They're actually planning this in Seattle. They really are. That's the idea behind AIM, a new concept by the Seattle-based design firm Artifact. AIM is a new concept for healthcare, built from the ground up, in which you wouldn't have to worry whether or not your insurance covers an MRI, or you could instantly glean whether that expensive out-of-the-pocket drug will really alleviate your chronic back pain. AIM is about creating an environment or a system where more positive health outcomes can occur, says Matthew Jordan, executive creative director at Artifact. He says that more engagement with patients, technology, and clinicians, and transparency from a standpoint of an economic value. AIM imagines a near future in which healthcare is not a destination, a visit to the hospital, but a continuum of care. It starts in your bathroom with a smart mirror, a toothbrush, and a toilet that can keep track of your vitals, like a more advanced Fitbit. That's where your healthcare is going. What you're seeing right now is your food preparation. What we're talking about is them trying to automate your money. All of these things, all they require is your freedom and your blind committance. Just commit to it and you'll be all right. Just do these things and you'll be okay. The same way that we are now having Sweden begin starting to microchip commuters to pay for their train journey. Could you imagine that? You have to, in order for you to get onto this train, you have got to have your hand chipped. But that's where we're going. And this is an article put up by Realities Watch. We actually had this article up earlier, but it says Swedish rail operator has taken a controversial move by implanting a microchip into 100 of its customer hands so they can pay for their journey without using the physical ticket. The technology, which has raised huge privacy concerns, has suggested data can be tracked.
And also because our corporate customers was asking for it. And we want to contribute to make their digital experience better, and also their travel experience. So this will most likely make their train journey more convenient.
Ja då, tack. Två, ja. Tack. God morgon. Ja, vi står stilla här. Två stycken, ja. Ja, okej. Okay. Tack. God morgon. Två där, ja. Tack så mycket. God morgon. Inom 2-3 minuter. Och där fick jag 2 stycken. Tack så hjärtligt.
This is a new technology, of course. We're seeing the baby steps in this area, but everything that makes our lives easier, I think, is interesting. And being able to travel on your train without using a ticket is it's a new way, and I think that attracts new customers to SJ.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. The concept of implanting yourself with microchips and then letting that be your life simply because it's easy. It's ease of access. That's what you want, right? It's easy, therefore, why not? So basically what they're trying to say is that the technology, which has raised huge privacy concerns, has suggested data can be used to track people. SJ Rail claims that their passengers will need to have the microchip already implanted, as they don't do it themselves. Microchip implants in Sweden are nothing new. In April, we actually reported that companies in Sweden had begun microchipping their workforces with RFID chips embedded underneath their skin. The first company implanted 150 of their staff with the tracking devices, and we've actually talked about this as well. The technology has raised huge privacy concerns as data can be used to track people. Precisely. So what we're talking about here is really the mark of the beast, the singularity. Whenever clay and metal don't mesh, we're putting these things in ourselves and not knowing the types of ramifications they have. You're giving yourself your own broadcasting frequency. You're messing with the natural order of things. Is very, very strange, if you ask me. And this is the future that we're going into, simply because we want to have ease of access. We want to have whatever is convenient. It may not be right, but we want to have what's convenient. And I don't think a lot of people understand that in this world of where we look at things in an efficient manner, and only as such, we really do miss the value of things. And what I guess what I'm trying to say is, as I said before at the start of the episode, when looking at this Amazon situation, Amazon buying out Whole Foods for $13.4 billion, that is more influential than people think. Okay, as I said before, well, at least Walmart can employ people around the world. Amazon recently talked about them having a hive-like structure, and I wasn't able to post that before I came on, but it was basically, as you would think, a little honeycomb bee-like hive, where it is a docking port basically for the trucks that bring in the equipment, the trucks that bring in all the things, and then the drones that are landing there and doing whatever it is that they're doing, taking the drones or taking the packages wherever they're going. But I digress. This is the introduction, and I'll play a video for you guys after this. But what we're talking about is indeed how Amazon is extending its tentacles further with the $13.4 billion purchase of Whole Foods. And this is the article from the Anti-Media. It's by Andrea Germanos, and it says, "This is extreme consolidation of the food system in action, which will lead to higher prices, fewer choices for consumers, and bigger profits for billionaires like its owner, Jeff Bezos," says Winona Hotter of the Food and Water Watch. And I definitely agree. I definitely agree. Online behemoth Amazon is acquiring Austin-based Whole Foods Market for $13.4 billion. The company announced this on Friday, a development the watchdogs say will pad billionaire pockets and spell bad for new customers. I agree. I was saying the same type of thing whenever we were seeing this kind of power and consolidation take place with Bayer and Monsanto. And now we're actually trying to see Bayer and Monsanto, what I would consider Monster, get their hands into the marijuana cannabis industry. But let me continue into this article. It says that Jim Cramer, host of NBC's Mad Money, expects the deal to make Amazon, headed by Jeff Bezos, quote, dominant food within the next 2 years. I think everybody would agree. He added, "I am taking down numbers for everybody who sells food. Everybody, because you can't compete with Amazon. They will not let you compete. It's already rattled the retail sector," he says. Indeed, it writes Bloomberg. The acquisition, quote, sends shockwaves across both the online and brick-and-mortar industries. Grocery chains plunged on Friday. Walmart Stores, Inc. fell as much as 7.1%, while Kroger tumbled 17%. Like, I definitely agree. I'm sure, as investors worry that woes will mount in the increasingly cutthroat industry. Amazon stock, meanwhile, was up 3.3%, making the acquisition essentially free for the online giant. Free. Buying Whole Foods was free for Amazon. That's wild. They literally have that much money to where purchasing Whole Foods for Amazon could be considered free. That's insane. According to Winona Hotter, executive director of Food and Water Watch, too few companies already exert outsized influence over our food choices. And this is, I wish I had the list in front of me where I could pull it up and show you guys all the things that are taking place with how many different food companies control things, and that's very real as well. How many different ways they're trying to resell you the same product over and over again. But let me get back into this article for you guys. It says that this is an extreme consolidation of the food system in action, which will lead to higher prices, fewer choices for consumers, and bigger profits for billionaires like its owner, Jeff Bezos. And if you guys actually went and read the article where I talked about Jeff Bezos basically trying to perpetuate the breakaway civilization mindset with Blue Origins and Blue Moon, and even Elon Musk trying to get to Mars, all these different things taking place, the consolidation of food power, that's all they need to create their own economy. It's crazy. But let me finish up this article so we can kind of wrap this up for you guys. Consumers already face substantially reduced options for grocery shopping because of the wave of mega mergers that have swept the supermarket and grocery manufacturing industry. In recent years, more than 4,000 grocery stores were joined under two owners of the Albertsons, Safeway, and Ahold Delhaize mergers. The proposed Amazon Whole Foods deal will only further curtail consumer choices and raise prices, she said. A report last year from the Institute of Local Self-Reliance outlined the extending tentacles of Amazon, which controls the underlying infrastructure of the economy. So this is, again, another one of the reasons why you're seeing Jeff Bezos, Peter Thiel, and Tim Cook meet up at the White House to talk about these types of things, so they can talk about self-driving grocery stores, and how they are already a thing in Shanghai. Things like Blue Apron, where they're sending you monthly parts of food, monthly packages of food with recipes. These things are happening. We're moving into this future to where, like Jack Ma said, you could be working only 4 hours a day in 30 years, simply because of all the things that are taking place. Automation, these robot bartenders, the burger bot, delivery food, you name it, delivery drones. This is where we're going. And I know that sounds strange. It's going to continually sound stranger to people who can't see these trends forming. But whenever you have things like Amazon buying Whole Foods, that should be the only indication of the signs that you need to see where we're going. This is the technocracy. This is also what some people consider the nanny state. This is why this is the New World Order. This is Agenda 21. This is sustainable development. This is them trying to have unilateral control on everything that we see taking place. Like I said before, with the Bayer-Monsanto merger, where you have a pharmaceutical company now taking care of an agricultural company, a giant agricultural company that has its tentacles everywhere. What happens whenever Monsanto makes the food? Amazon delivers it to you, tells you it's Whole Foods, and you eat it up because they just decided to do whatever with whatever program they came out with that time. This is the world that we're living in. So whenever we have people saying that they want organic, that they want natural, that they want vegan, that they want something without all kinds of steroids, vitamins, hormones injected into them, this is what they're talking about, because we see these companies assuming mass, assuming power, and trying to streamline our existence, trying to streamline everything we see taking place to where it's convenient. But what is always convenient isn't always best. What is always easy isn't worth it. You see, and I know on the surface these things look good, but that's why they're getting introduced now, because we don't know what ramifications they're having just yet. We don't know what standards all these things have to be kept at. This is the future. This is how our society is transforming into the technocracy. However, that's all I really have for you guys. I know I kind of went over a lot, and I really wanted to try to illustrate it to you guys in a way to where you see these things shaping, to where you see them trying to say, well, you won't work as much, so we'll give you this money. Well, you won't be going all over the place, so we'll deliver you food. Well, you won't be adventuring as much, so we'll just create this, that, and the third for you. This is them trying to tell you that don't think too much. This is the social engineering. This is the whole mindset of them trying to say, you know what? We'll take care of you. This is the technocracy. We need to understand all the things that we see taking place. Social engineering on a massive scale. This is the New World Order, to where they want to try to put you in a trance state to where we don't think about everything else that takes place. But like I said, that's all I really have for you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'll have it in the description bar below. Or leave us a voicemail at 843-900-6296. And make sure you guys are downloading the episodes and become a part of our Patreon exclusive membership. Your support helps keep us organic and honest. That's all I have for you guys. This is Noise Era, Freedom Faction, out.